Howdy folks, Jambareeqi here. Tim Burton has been applauded as one of cinema's visionary greats, an artist who has given weird outcasts a voice and revolutionised many movie genres. However, many say that his career has slipped, labelling him as a sellout who is now more of a brand than a filmmaker. In this video, I'm going to be sharing my picks for the top 5 best and worst Tim Burton movies. Let the countdown begin. Dark Shadows. Based on the TV show, this film follows the wealthy Barnabas Collins, who ends up projecting a witch called Angie. In revenge, she uses black magic to send Barnabas' love, Josette, off of a cliff. Angie then bitterly curses Barnabas with vampirism and has him locked away for centuries. He's eventually unearthed in 1972, where he meets his struggling descendants, who he decides to help financially. However, Angie turns out to be immortal, and is still very scorned. So I will admit that Dark Shadows has this campy, so bad it's good kind of appeal. Unlike other bad Burton films, it's at least fun to watch, and has sort of become a new guilty pleasure for me.
Caroline, my God. I'm a werewolf, okay? Let's not make a big deal out of it. Woof.
However, when I look at this film critically, especially for Tim Burton standards, it's an absolute muddled mess. A very lost and confused film that never finds its footing. It wants to be everything all at once, and I mean everything. A tragic supernatural love story, a wacky quirky relative sitcom, a wholesome comedy about the importance of family, an aggressively saucy sex romp, a gory horror movie, and a satire on the 70s landscape. Look, I'm not naive. I know that a movie can be multiple things. It is possible, but Dark Shadows failed to convince me that it knew what it wanted to be from the start, and its lacking direction makes the whole thing collapse in on itself. The film's humour is honestly terrible too. There's a tacky cheapness to the comedy that shows a lack of effort. From the stale cliche, character from the past, who doesn't understand modern things, shtick.
What sorcery is this?
Reveal yourself, tiny songstress!
To lowbrow jokes in which sex is the punchline. It's such uninspired comedy. I also found it very hard to get on board with the fact that our supposed hero is a mass murderer. Yeah, he's meant to be cursed, I get that. But this hex can't explain away or justify every kill, especially when Barnabas proclaims a motive before playing judge, jury, and executioner.
Collins' family took you in, bestowed their sacred trust upon you. You brazenly betrayed that trust.
The film could have embraced him as a villain protagonist, but it's way more keen to frame him as this sympathetic hero, who apparently only does bad things because of Angie's spell, which doesn't work when he abuses his vampire powers to get what he wants,
You have grown rather weary of working for Angel Pay.
has multiple affairs with women despite claiming to be madly in love with a woman called Victoria, and murders innocent people with the laziest sounding remorse I've ever heard.
I am terribly sorry. Cannot imagine how thirsty I am.
I could have easily put Dark Shadows at number 1 worst, purely based on its downright incompetence, but I would honestly take Campy Disaster over the dull as dishwater dreg that's lower on my list. To fix this film, I would have leaned more into letting it being a raunchy black comedy horror for adults, so that the dark, mature elements could have thrived more and the overall tone would be much more clear. Barnabas could have still set out to help his family, with a loving bond being formed, but they would feel betrayed once they find out all of his murders and mind controls, and then have to find the courage to slay the vampire that happens to be related to them. That's honestly a stronger story to me. Mars attacks. When Earth is visited by a race of Martians, humans are prepared to make peace with them, but these aliens turn out to be evil and actually just want to cause destructive chaos. Growing up, I loved Mars Attacks whenever it aired on TV. I really enjoyed the aliens who went ag and had fun seeing all of these famous people pop up. However, as an adult, I've come to realize that Mars Attacks is cosmic crap. Sure, said Martians have great skull-faced alien designs that combine Burton's gothic love of skeletons with traditional squishy space creatures. Yes, the way these guys talk can be funny. Oh, and yeah, their experiments have a little nightmare fuel to them for horror fans. As a legion of villains though, they aren't that entertaining. Not only does it become repetitively tedious, seeing them surprise ray gun humans wanting peace again and again and again, we get the joke already. But they mainly spend the movie blowing up building after building or zapping their super lasers at helpless humans who can't shoot back. They're so overpowered that it becomes boring to watch. As impressive as the star-studded cast is, there's just too many celebrities crammed into the film. Because the movie is so overcrowded, most of our characters end up being incredibly underdeveloped, resulting in heroes that are made up of paper-thin protagonists, bland stereotypes, or pointless celebrity cameos.
You're Tom Jones, right? It ain't unusual, eh? Tom, can I have an autograph? Anybody got a pen?
The only plotline that I found myself engaged in was the arc of Jim Brown's Byron Williams, a retired boxer who is far away from his family and working an undignified job in a Vegas casino, with the invasion now motivating him to become a boxing hero once again so they can save his family. But this is one good plot in a sea of monotonous and stale ones. Look, I get that this film is meant to be a black comedy satire, but even as a spoof of alien invasion films, it's a waste of audience's time. Heck, I would argue that it ends up becoming the kind of corny, boring and hokey flying saucer movie that it obviously wants to poke fun at.
We have to nuke them now!
General Decker, if you do not shut up, I am going to relieve you of your command.
Like I said too, the comedy can get super repetitive, with the humour being limited to, hey look, humans care more about their ego vanity and making money than the alien invasion happening around them. This is the joke for nearly every plot.
A fleet of vehicles which can best be described as flying saucers.
Come on! Papa needs a new pair of shoes! Yo!
Mars Attacks would have been a much better film if it cut down its cast just a little bit, so that our characters could be rounded out more. I'd also say that The Martians would have been way more entertaining if they had far more interaction with Earth culture, because honestly, the best scenes in the film are when the aliens are sharing one-on-one moments with the humans. Planet of the Apes. When astronaut Leo Davidson lands on a planet dominated by humanoid apes, he bands together with the oppressed humans to take on the tyrannical General Fade. Now yes, the makeup for these apes, which were done by the legendary Rick Baker, are phenomenal. However, beyond these practical effects accomplishments, Burton's Planet of the Apes is a snooze fest. I actually needed a full-on nap only 30 minutes into the film. It's mainly made boring by how nothing really happens. It's a paper-thin plot in which we're either watching powerless slaves stand around while the apes wax politically in dull debates about human rights.
The human problem cannot be solved by simply throwing money at it.
The government tried that once, and all we got for it was a welfare state that nearly bankrupted us.
Or Leo leading everyone through a tedious wander across the planet to find his ship.
Well, that's where my crew is, so that's where we're going.
Doesn't he ever stop?
I didn't even care enough about these humans to cheer on their freedom, from Mark Wahlberg just playing his typical bland macho persona, to prisoners who are only defined by the fact that they're slaves.
There's a curfew for humans.
If they see you on the street at night, they kill you on sight.
You stay here, you're already dead.
This doesn't even feel like a Tim Burton movie. Apparently Fox gave Tim an extremely tight schedule, which led to a very rushed production. This really shows in the direction, because so many scenes have this let's just get through it kind of energy.
Did I tell you were coming? This camp is a disgrace. Some humans have escaped. If they come this way, we will crush them.
The only actor who seems invested in what's happening is Tim Roth as General Fade, but you could argue that he's actually overacting, with his distracting, jittery bouncing and bizarre cocaine jaw.
She had no choice. They threatened her life. I'll report the matter to the Senate myself.
Honestly, I think this film could have done with a longer production schedule. Fox should have just let the writers have more time to modernise the Heston movie, and given Tim a less strict deadline, so that he could sprinkle more of his Burtonisms into this reimagining. I swear most of the problems with this movie stem from Fox being ridiculously impatient. Alice in Wonderland. Alice Kingsley has just been proposed to, but she panics with her response. Then she runs away and falls into Wonderland, where her childhood memories come back and she reunites with her old fantastical friends, including Mad Hatter and the White Rabbit. However, she learns that she's destined to defeat the Queen of Hearts' Jambareeqi, so she must prepare for this prophecy while evading the Queen herself. This movie doesn't want to be an Alice in Wonderland film. It's like Disney were way too scared about making a movie based on whimsical nonsense for modern audiences, and that reluctant fear led to them commissioning something far more commercially appealing. It steers away from the original tale's illogical surrealism, choosing instead to over-explain its world, while repackaging Carol's book as an action fantasy epic akin to Lord of the Rings or Pirates of the Caribbean. Look, I'm all for reimagining a story, but this film revises Alice in Wonderland so much that you could argue that it isn't even an adaptation anymore, which begs the question, why did Disney want to make an Alice movie to begin with?
You were just as dim-witted the first time you were here. You called it Wonderland, as I recall.
Wonderland.
Its desperate need to play things extremely safe results in a very generic good versus evil blockbuster, chock to the brim with cliches that everyone has become tired of. From the chosen one trope that makes our story painfully predictable.
Oh yeah, that being you there with a vorpal sword. No other swords can kill the Jambareeqi, no how.
To casting Johnny Depp as yet another eccentric comic relief who hogs our hero's screen time.
Madam, you are being heinously bamboozled by these lick-spittle toadies you surround yourselves with.
Speaking of Alice, she always seems so bored to be in Wonderland. Nothing personal against the actress, but she comes off as more sleepy than enchanted. Sure, she has her moments of emotion now and again, but her main direction is very stilted.
Wait. This is my dream. I'm going to wake up now and you'll all disappear.
There's a lot of directorial choices that are just, well, bizarre to be frank. Like, why is Anne Hathaway constantly floating her hands? It's more annoyingly distracting than charmingly whimsical. And why does the Mad Hatter keep randomly doing Scottish impressions?
The abused
And enslaved in the Red Queen's court.
all of you,
Stand up and fight
eyes up.
against the bloody Red Queen.
I do appreciate that Burton's Alice in Wonderland tries to go for its own unique visual style, instead of copying and pasting the original animated film. But these characters just come off as off-puttingly uncanny valley in live action, which is a running problem for a lot of Disney remakes. This film could have utilised Burton's trademark stop-motion animation. Just imagine it. A faithful adaptation of Carol's surrealist nonsense in the style of Corpse Bride or Frankenweenie. That would have been sick. Dumbo. After Captain Holt returns from the war, he gets a job as an elephant keeper at Mr. Medici's circus, and is assigned the job of turning the big-eared baby elephant Dumbo into a star. Luckily, Holt's kids, Millie and Joe, find a way to make Dumbo fly, and a successful act is born. Yep, this is another Disney remake, and it's even worse than Alice in Wonderland, a murkily desaturated film with an unintentionally creepy baby elephant who is so uncannily humanized that it's disturbing.
What is that?
Baby Jumbo.
I already got fake freaks in the freak show. I don't need a real one in the center ring.
Like a lot of Disney remakes, this one goes out of its way to quote-unquote fix things, but its attempts at improvement are all misfires. Like, it tries to over-explain how its fantasy world works, so that it can be more realistic than the original. Science is applied to Dumbo's flight act even though it didn't need to be. The classic Baby Mind song is now just a circus performer strumming casually in the background. Timothy Mouse is now a pet with no purpose in the story, and the pink elephants are suddenly a bubble show in the circus. These supposed fixes to make Dumbo more grounded just take away all of that Disney magic. Dumbo is also one of the shorter Disney animated films, and Disney tried to improve on this by making it twice as long, as Burton stretches a very simple story into a big, almost 2-hour epic that drags so much that I kept needing to check my watch.
My God, wake me up when it's over.
Disney also tried to go for a more optimistic and idealistic ending, in which Dumbo and his mum are returned to the wild, while the circus drops as animal performers. When I first saw this film, I found it to be a sweet conclusion. But on rewatch, I've come to realise that it's very pandering and saccharine. I mean, no one should expect a film set in 1919 to revolutionise animal rights overnight.
Welcome to the Medici family circus. where we believe no wild animals shall be held in captivity.
How could have this film been better? Well, coincidentally, there's already a good Dumbo movie out there. Yeah, it's not aged perfectly, but it's still a charming little film that found the magic in simple storytelling. It didn't need to be a Tim Burton blockbuster. Right, time for my best picks. Batman. Bruce Wayne is a wealthy billionaire by day, and the crime-fighting superhero Batman by night. One night though, Batman accidentally lets gangster Jack Napier fall into a vat of toxic chemicals. He survives though and rebrands himself as the Joker, the clown prince of crime. Meanwhile, photographer Vicky Vale is investigating the true identity of Batman, and her tracks lead her to the charming Bruce Wayne. Burton's Batman heavily explores the psychological duality of the dark detective. Bruce may be a suave socialite in public, but he's actually a lonely man haunted by the death of his parents, the very murder that made him create the alter ego of a bat. It's the introduction of the bubbly and warm-hearted Vicky Vale that makes Bruce question his devotion to superheroism, as he wonders if his two sides can coincide.
Vicky, what I'm trying to tell you is...
Hey, it's okay. You can tell me.
Okay.
Vicky is more than just Bruce's love interest though. Sure, she's often the Joker's hostage, but she's also a talented and hard-working investigative photographer who shows a lot of gumption and intellect in a hunt for the man behind Batman's mask.
Okay, here's the inner city, here's Axis Chemicals, and here are the sightings so far. Maybe Batman has some kind of flight pattern or something.
Jack Nicholson's Joker is a great take on the Clown Prince too. This is an actor known for his strong charisma as a celebrity and scary, unhinged performances in horror cinema, which are both fitting qualifications for a cartoon villain who revels in chaos. I also love how this Joker exploits his degrees in chemistry and art as a villain. Two academic subjects that exist to inspire humanity and creativity, yet Joker abuses his knowledge to cause fear and destruction.
He's been using Brand X. But with new Joker brand, I get agreeing again and again.
Burton's Gotham is honestly spellbinding. This film noir landscape, crowned with towering Golden Age New Yorkian architecture, that's full of gothic mood and operatic melodrama, inspiring a stunning visual style that's like a cross between theatrical opera and classical silent horror. These bold and striking images are backed by one of Danny Elfman's best music scores of all time, a sublime orchestral soundtrack that encompasses the majesty of Batman's legacy, the flair of film noir cinema, and the awe of Gotham's scale. Trust me, I love Batman Returns too. It's a great continuation that shares a lot of the same qualities, but Batman 1989 just has this unique vision and artistic classiness that can't be matched. It's the kind of superhero film that I want to make one day. Big Eyes. Based on a true story, Big Eyes follows Margaret, a single mother and struggling artist who ends up marrying a fellow painter called Walter Keane. However, Walter turns out to be a con artist, who starts taking credit for Margaret's trademark big-eyed children paintings and gets rich off of them while Marge does all of the work. This is a severely underrated Tim Burton film that sadly went under the radar. It's a gripping biopic about a very talented woman who became a victim of a narcissistic hack.
If you tell anyone, I'll have you taken out. I know people.
Walter is first introduced as a charismatic charmer, but then gradually morphs into this psychotic controlling maniac, giving us maybe the most terrifying Burton villain to date, made all the more scarier by the fact that he's based on a real man. Big Eyes dives into the many problems that artists face too, as well as the sacrifices they end up making to get their art out in public. Marge's paintings are personal to her, and she puts her soul into every piece. They're like a baby's, yet the world underuses her talent or rejects her for not fitting the archetype of an artist.
Reese, what are you babbling about? Long division? Could you please help the world and shut your mouth?
Sure, Walter's scheme is making the family very wealthy, but it all comes at the cost of Marge's honor, safety, and freedom.
You and your whole non-representational crowd of frauds!
Shut up! You're so full of shit, Walter!
Get out of my house! Get out of my big house!
As stressful and nightmarish as Walter's reign is, Marge's fight back is just as engaging to follow. There's a feminist empowerment to her courage as she takes on her abusive ex-husband, wielding her paintbrush as a sword and standing up for women artists everywhere.
Although he has been taking credit for it for 10 years. I am the only painter in the family.
I won't spoil the movie's ending because I really want folks to go watch this film, but Marge's clapback against Walt leads to one of my favourite courtroom scenes in cinema history. A fantastically compelling battle for justice. Let's grab a bucket of popcorn for the ride, worthy.
You're Jekyll and Hyde.
That's an outrageous statement! I demand we strike it off the record.
Overruled. No, you are outrageous.
Big Eyes might not fit Burton's typical gothic melodrama brand, but it still features some of his best directing in years, showing us that Tim still has a talent nowadays, he just needs a banger of a script to work with. Beetle Juice. When married couple Adam and Barbara end up in a car accident, they become spirits and have to adapt to being ghosts. Then, the wealthy Dietz family move into Adam and Barbara's own house. These freshly dead ghosts try to scare the ritualitis away, but the haunting skills are pretty terrible. Eager for customers, the vulgar and crass bioexorcist Beetle Juice offers his service to them, but Beetlejuice's methods are highly questionable. One highlight of this cult supernatural comedy has to be the amazing practical effects, which have really held up since the 80s. Nearly every scene in Beetlejuice calls for a fantastical visual or a ghostly gag, and the effects team deliver on every wizardry.
Beetlejuice!
That's the thing, Beetlejuice has mainly stood the test of time because it's so invested in its own wild imagination and surreal logic. It's never ever confined to Hollywood tradition or held back by a fear of risk. The whole movie wants to make love to the art of creativity itself.
Barbara, you don't know what's out there.
Here.
Beyond its macabre delights though, is a biting satire on the shallowness and greed of the upper class.
Don't you dare speak to others about me. The only thing that scares me is being embarrassed in front of the few hip people I can get to set foot in this part of Connecticut. So let's play family just for tonight.
It uses the awful Dietz family to sharply poke fun at the rich elite and their drive for capitalist scheme.
People will pay big money for this, right, Grace? Oh.
The Enquirer is offering $50,000 for proof of life after death.
At the same time though, the movie holds genuine sympathy for the Dietz daughter, Lydia, a young goth girl who feels so alone under a superficial family's roof and full of so much grief for her deceased biological mother that she would rather be dead so that she could be raised by the far more loving Adam and Barbara.
He told me that if I let him out, he would take me to the other side to find you.
No, Lydia, we're dead.
I want to be dead too.
No.
However, let's not dance around the obvious, folks. It's our title character who hogs the spotlight of this paranormal extravaganza. A gross and sleazy ghost with a car salesman approach to his controversial service.
We are leaving now. Oh, wait.
Oh, come on. Don't go yet. Hey, guy, come on. We're simpatico here. Look at us. Huh? We even shop in the same store. Hey.
Played by an unrecognizable Michael Keaton, Beetlejuice steals the movie's thunder by being this unstoppable force of chaotic evil, with a knack for turning everything into a dark joke.
You leave her alone, you...
We're meant to fear and hate him as a villain, but a big part of us is compelled by his charismatic energy and talent for spooky spectacle. Beetlejuice is undeniably a horror comedy classic that's unabashed about its weirdness, packed to the brim with hilarious gallows humour, and exploding with otherworldly imagination. Let's hope that this year's sequel lives up to it. Edwood. Based on the life of Edward D. Wood Jr., the man that's considered to be the worst director of all time, Edwood follows an eccentric filmmaker on a quest to become one of the greats. But he's constantly restrained by a lack of talent or budget. Now, I'll confess that this film takes a lot of creative liberties as a biopic, from its over-flattering portrayal of the real exploitative Ed Wood as a person, to its indulgent use of fabricated events. But as a piece of entertainment, it's a great comedy drama about an independent artist fiercely fighting for his dream, which is a relatable story for creatives everywhere who are struggling to get their projects made, or make a solid living from what they love to do.
Orson Welles was only 26 when he made Citizen Kane. I'm already 30.
Ed, you're still young. And this is the time in your life when you're supposed to be struggling.
Burton's insight into Edward's filmmaking style is genuinely endearing, because there's a charm to Wood's work with what you've got approach to directing, as Eddie adapts to his limitations and uses his natural charisma to gain support.
We are going to have the most terrifying monster ever seen on film. A ghastly creature, created from an atomic mutation.
There's an allure to Ed's ragtag gang of misfits too, outcasts of Hollywood who have found a family within Wood's circle. I have been charmed by the filmmaker's undying passion. No matter how much Ed struggles, his band of weirdos stick by him.
How do you do it? How do you get all your friends to get baptized? Just so you can make a monster movie.
This movie is also a staple of classic LGBT+ cinema too, not just because it's a sincere love letter to campy B-movies, but also due to the fact that a few characters are a part of the queer spectrum. Not only does Edward himself feel most comfortable in women's clothing, but his friend Bunny comes out as trans during Ed's career.
It's something I've wanted to do for a long time. But it wasn't until I saw your movie that I realized I have to take action. Goodbye, penis.
Heck, I would credit this movie for being the seed for my own journey as a queer person. It's this very film that made me see the joy of queer expression and the merits of finding a chosen family who accepts you. Edward is a banger of a comedy too. Like, there's so many really funny gags to come from the crude nature of Ed's filmmaking style, with Ed's actors being humiliated or confused by their director's bizarre ideas. Plus, there's tons of memorable, quirky lines that always get a big laugh out of me, and I adore quoting.
Karloff does not deserve to smell my shit! That limey cocksucker can rot in hell for all I care!
I loved this film so much growing up that it made me nerdily obsessed with the real Edward Jr. himself. I ended up excitingly collecting his movies on DVD, studied his whole life, and even remixed clips from his films into my very own song. That is how much I love this movie. I'm a dork for this film.
Ed.
Yes?
Visions are worth fighting for. Why spend your life making someone else's dreams?
Don't forget to subscribe to my channel for more fun animation and film related videos. Edward Scissorhands. When Avon Lady Peg tries to find a customer in a decrepit old house, she ends up discovering a young man with scissors for hands, called Edward. Sympathetic for Ed, Peg takes him home and raises him as one of her own. At first, Edward attracts attention, drawing curiosity from nosy neighbours, but they soon turn on him once he's blamed for a crime. To me, Edward Scissorhands is Tim Burton at his most vulnerable and unfiltered. Based on an idea of his very own creation, Edward reflects Burton's own feelings as a quirky creative who doesn't fit the norm. The movie explores society's relationship with gifted people with disabilities. Locals are quick to raise Edward up as a special celebrity and an inspiration to everyone around him. But as the film goes on, it's obvious that their love for him is entirely artificial. They don't care about his feelings or see him as a fellow human being. He's a carnival spectacle who they can exploit, scapegoat, or even creepily fetishize.
Do you imagine those hands are hot or cold? And just think what a single snip could do.
As tragic as Edward's story is, there's a sincere beauty to the way that Burton captures his passion for cutting. Tim understands what it's like to be deep in the zone for a project, and that euphoria comes through for every artistic endeavour of Ed's. However, it's his friendship with Peg's daughter, Kim, that makes for the most endearing cinema. We get to watch Kim come of age by learning to sympathise with someone different, and Edward is given a chance to experience real love and connection with someone of his own age. Many neurodivergent and disabled people find this film to be incredibly relatable, because it truly understands the struggles and hardships that these communities face. As someone autistic myself, I get very emotional watching this film, because I see myself in Edward, and find a kindred spirit in him.
Grab your plates. Soup served.
I thought this was Isabel.
What?
I thought this was Isabel.
Yeah, it is just goodbye. It was a figure of speech, Ed.
To be honest, Edward Scissorhands is the movie that made me want to become a filmmaker. I will always credit this film for being one of the sparks for my dream of filmmaking. It's a powerful and gut-wrenching fantasy drama that pulls no punches as a satire of society's treatment towards people that they refuse to understand, while also being a heartfelt celebration of humanity's passion for putting their soul into their talents. Feel free to watch my top 5 best and worst Roald Dahl movies next. I've been Jambareeqi. Cheerio, folks.